Everyone's wondering how I lost 100 pounds. Yeah.
I was going to ask
exactly.
you.
Exactly. I know. Believe me.
You're in great shape. You're in great shape. Better eating, less stress?
Yeah, definitely. all of the above.
All of the above.
Yes.
Well, listen, just backstage, you had mentioned a little bit about your own connection to Canada, a romantic connection to Canada.
Yeah. So I ran an oil field and gas company, and so I spent time in all the great places. I love Calgary, but Regina, Medicine Hat, all the wonderful oil patch here in Canada. But then I was also engaged at Banff at Lake Louise Hotel. So yeah, 26 years ago, almost exactly. Yeah. She's still hanging around with me too, so all good.
For reasons that we're all grateful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful news. But that means that you know a lot about our continent, our country, our potential. And so let me kick this off by asking you the first question about what the topic that's the headline here today, North America, and particularly Fortress North America. When you see the alignments that are occurring in trade relationships and the trading architecture between our two countries, what's your observations of that today?
Oh, goodness. Well, I think when I think about it, by the way, in trade negotiations in particular, there are no angels. I was a part of a number of them, including the USMCA, the previous agreement between the United States and Mexico and Canada. These are hard fought, and sometimes for good reason, right? There are particular things that you want to do and preserve, and all fine. As a guy who ran as a Tea Party congressman from South Central Kansas, no trade barriers or no non-tariff barriers. Like, let's all go compete. That should be the model. It's very difficult to get to. And today when you see, and I hear all the noise between the United States and Canada, but it's great to be here because you all get it, right? You all get that, all right, strong and free. And that value set underpins the relationship. So, we had Prime Minister Trudeau during my time.
One of your favorite people in the world, clearly.
Yes. I won't live as long, but it's okay. Prime ministers come and go. Presidents come and go. But this relationship is underpinned by a deep understanding. I was part of the effort to make sure that we got it right on the security. Right, we have NORAD. We have all the stuff that we do together on the military side. We worked hard to get the two Michaels freed when they were being held by the Chinese government during my time. And those are evergreen. And so, in spite of the noise, and I get it. I worked for President Trump, so I get it. I would wake up every morning, check my phone, make sure I had a job, and then go into the office. No, think about it. I was the 70th Secretary of State. He's the 45th president. I know how my successor got booted. Okay, I get the joke. By the way, he would always remind me, Michael, how many electoral votes did you get? Sir, 0. Yeah, okay, just remember that. I got 270. And so I get the noise that surrounds that, but I would just urge everyone, but especially the relationship in the United States and Canada, just watch the through lines that have existed over decades, and the relationships will end up in a really good and important place. Canada is important to the United States. We are incredibly important to Canada, and we should all work to round the hard points and do our level best, because the real problems aren't along our border. They're the ones that you spoke about in your opening. The rise of these fiefdoms, these authoritarians, is real and threatens all of us who believe in basic human dignity and property rights.
I appreciate that. Now let's talk, exactly right, 100%. Let's talk about Fortress North America and that potential. Because in the roles that you've held, you've been able to see how great power competition is forcing spheres of influence to be responded to. And much of your incredible diplomacy actually helped precipitate the realignments that we've needed across the Western world. But when you think of our hemisphere of North America, of South America, what's your observation of what's been happening in the last couple of years?
It's interesting. In South America, I think it's the last 6 elections now, the governments have moved in a strong free market direction, right? So I'll call them center-right governments. I'm counting on yours to do the same here in Canada. I don't get involved in other people's politics. I've done enough election interference in my life. So I'm now out of the business. That's a joke for any of the media in the back of the room. That's a joke.
The media don't understand you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, yeah. I always kid that, if I watched the BBC, I'd hate America too. Anyway.
We have the CBC.
Yeah, the CBC would be the same. So would CNN. We all have our crosses to bear.
Ours is worse, I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
But carry on.
Look, we should not take for granted that as the world changes and conflicts evolve, that the importance of neighborhoods does really matter. It's not. I'm not arguing. I don't believe in the concept of spheres of influence. I want the Chinese Communist Party to have a sphere of influence that is exactly zero. Like I want Xi Jinping to control the palace. But having said that, we all need allies and partners, and the best ones are the ones that share a common set of understandings about civilization and those that have close geographic proximity. Yeah. And you're watching these conflicts, right? The way these very low dollar, very sophisticated weapons now can truly impact. We do need to do the hard work to protect and preserve not just we think of sovereignty as a political immigration issue, but it is a pretty dodgy world when a terrorist group can get 5,000 Shahed drones, put them in the back of a truck, and drive them somewhere inside of one of our countries. And that's going to require lots of cooperation between Canada, the United States, and I hope our partners in Mexico and South America as well.
Well, let's talk about this because I think you've put your finger on the issue right away, which is Beijing. And what we've noticed, particularly in the last 10 years, is how they've weaponized commerce. Typically, commercial relationships were left a little independent from national security considerations. But in the globalized world we've inherited, all of these decisions that Beijing makes affects our supply chains, our economic security, the resilience of market democracies. Here in North America, what can we do to participate in securing those economic supply chains and the resilience of our economies?
Oh, goodness. So I sometimes get asked what I'm most proud of, and I seldom answer it. But if really pressed, I was at the center of, and President Trump did the heavy lifting, and so did some of the other seniors. We changed America's policy. For 40 years, our policy had been, go sell more stuff into China, they'll become more like us. And I had this debate with Dr. Kissinger before he passed so many times, and he thought I was all wet. When you disagree with Dr. Kissinger in America, that's like a bad place to be usually. So much smarter than I could ever be. But he was just wrong for our time. So I think I met with every nasty leader in the world. I met with the Taliban. I met with Putin. I met with Chairman Kim. I was with him for like 12 hours total. I'll never get that time back. By the way, I'm the American record holder, having passed Dennis Rodman, who was the previous record holder. It's a very funny story for the bar tonight.
You're contemplating tattoos, clearly.
Yeah, no, I have no tattoos yet. Exactly. The nose ring is missing as well. But the only one of them that can actually change the way we live is the Chinese Communist Party under Xi Jinping. That can actually change the very nature of the countries that we all love so much. So what do you do about that? So you have these deep supply chain commercial ties. We're not going to decouple. It's neither practical nor do I think, frankly, it's in anyone's best interest. If they want to make beach balls and sell them at Walmart in America, knock yourself out. But when it comes to anything that is remotely related to technology and security, we should be, and I would include pharmaceuticals, biochem stuff. When you start to talk about the things that really are civilizationally important, we should make sure that we're making them in friendly places. So whether it's America or Canada or even our friends in India, right, partner places, South Korea, we should have friends that have enough of that resource and capability that we never find ourselves in a place where we did during COVID, where we just didn't have stuff that we needed. So that'd be step one. Step two, when we talk about China, we talk about Taiwan a lot. Like, are they going to invade Taiwan? Practical matter. I don't think that they will, but I'm very worried that that doesn't matter because they'll take it over through political force, right, through winning an election. And so when I think about that, we have to do the hard work to use our peace through strength model to deter them from doing that. But I'm much less worried about Taiwan than I am about Denver, Colorado, or Los Angeles, or Phoenix, or Ottawa, or Toronto. The Chinese Communist Party is hard at work inside the gates here, right where we're sitting today. I'll bet, can't see very much out there, but I will bet you that there are Chinese Communist Party affiliated people in this room today. And by the way, they look like me, like they're white Italian dudes, right? But they're working for this mission set, and they're not spies in the quintessential sense. They're in our university systems. In the United States, there is not a single university in the United States that isn't deeply tied to Chinese money. Chinese students in our country, they pay full student tuition, and then they come give money to our labs so that they can, steal our stuff. They are inside the gates in ways that I think we have we've been very naive about this risk and what that means to us. And so we should adopt a model that is on the inside the gates problem. We should adopt a model that's really simple: reciprocity. You want to buy farmland near Fort Riley, Kansas. We'd like to buy some land near your military facility in Western China. Good luck, right? It's not going to happen, and yet we somehow just missed the mark here. And you want to go study at a Chinese university, you can probably do that if you want to study like science or art or literature. But if you want to study hyperscaling physics, they're smarter than that. And they don't let that happen. And we all in the West have let that happen. The last thing to say is, and I alluded to this, this is best told by example about how deep they are and the scale of it. When I was the CIA director, I learned of an espionage operation being conducted against the United States. It was being conducted out of the Chinese consulate in Houston, Texas, of all places. It was, best I could tell, the largest spying operation ever conducted inside the United States that we're aware of. And we'd allowed it to go on for years because we were afraid that if we shut it down, they would do something bad to us, right? It was this fear of escalation, if you will, diplomatic in that sense, escalation. So the State Department always was against it. The good news was I became Secretary of State. And it's not a state. So myself and Director Wray of the FBI spent 4.5 months putting together an operation. And we closed the Chinese consulate in Houston, Texas, which is a great story, just in how it came about. So I invited the Chinese ambassador in. My team's like, oh, you can't meet with him. Like, secretaries don't meet with ambassadors, right? I'm like, no, I got this one. Like, you only get so much fun in life. Told them they were spying and they had to be out in 72 hours. Within less than an hour, the entire consulate was on fire. They were burning everything there. And within 2 days, we had identified hundreds of Chinese agents operating in the United States, most of which we were unaware of. They started getting tickets to fly out. Right? You could just see the network light up, and not me, but our internal security folks, the FBI mostly, did really remarkable work. And I remember meeting with Director Wray shortly thereafter. We were pretty proud of ourselves for having pulled this off. And then, we took a breath and oh my gosh, what do we still not know? And I would be very mindful, as many of you are in the business world, they are inside your companies. They're trying to get inside your security systems. This is a full-on effort to undermine Western civilization. It's not just about stealing intellectual property. It's about shaping the minds of Canadians. And as we sit here, many of you are young. Some of you have on your phone, or your children and grandchildren have on their phone, basically the Chinese Communist Party messaging team. And they're telling your kids things, and you can't disintermediate it. And they're telling them Canada sucks. And you people are decadent, and the West is in decline. And if Canada's bad, America's really bad. Be very mindful that they are working very hard to shape the next generation to undermine the things that we care most about. So if you said, Mike, what do you do? I would start in our schools and with parents, making sure they understood this Chinese global campaign to convince us that, your point was earlier, that we're the evil actors. And we can never let that happen.
Well said. Well said. And they obviously ally themselves with voices in Canada who are also persuaded that we are the evil actors.
Sure.
And that we need to apologize for our history, our traditions, and our contributions to the world rather than learn from them. Yeah. Let me pick up on a lot of what you just said here, because I think that's relevant and germane to what we're dealing with in Canada. Prime Minister Carney had gone to Beijing and then Davos to deliver a speech about essentially American rupture. He didn't say the word American, but he said rupture. The only country he mentioned in his speech, the only country he mentioned in his speech was Beijing and China. In the last months, although in the campaign he had articulated China as the greatest threat to Canadian national security and the Canadian economy and Canadian way of life, he has gone on a full-tilt campaign to deeply partner with Beijing. He has not provided Taiwan air flight access to Canada, but he sped a deal forward for a Chinese air company. My colleague Adam Chambers mentioned that in the House of Commons today.
Interesting.
Decision after decision has seen Prime Minister Carney tilt toward Beijing and now more recently toward Europe. In this era of geopolitical rivalry, with China being the threat that it is, with its capacity to deceive, with its ability to commercially influence and to buy, what would be your advice to Canadians about that threat and the direction that this government is going?
Yeah, it's really pretty straightforward. History does come back around. This effort to undermine the central thesis of what we all care about, the Western idea, there have been many have tried. These folks are closer today than ever. And so you have to return to basic principles, right? The very reason that you all came to this conference, to be part of this, right? These ideas that we hold so dearly are antithetical to what the Chinese communists, I mean, they're completely polar opposites. And so when I see someone like Prime Minister Carney or the leadership in Spain or whatever, who would say, gosh, we're really mad at Donald Trump, or we're really mad because of America, and then they say, and we're going to go choose the Chinese Communist Party as our counterparty because of that. That is, I try to be kind. Hang on, I can't.
Misguided.
I'll try to be kind. It's misguided. Thank you. It's very short-sighted because they will sell your nation's values down the river in 2 seconds. Think about this, just to put it in perspective. In late 2019, early 2020, it became very clear to the United States government that the virus that spread across the world had come from a Chinese lab. It was, I don't know, as a CI director, we had high confidence that was the case. We had good evidence. I don't fault Xi Jinping for that. It was a lab error. I guess I fault them for not having good security at their level 4 biolab. But it wasn't intentional. He didn't spread this he didn't get it out of the lab so he could go kill 10 million people and destroy economies. But when he learned about it, he took every action that demonstrated absolute reckless negligence, gross negligence with respect to human life. He put people on airplanes and sent them to Europe. He knew what he was doing then. So in America, our system, that'd be murder one of 10 million people. And Xi Jinping hasn't lost one moment of sleep as a result of that. And so when we begin to talk about these leaders sort of like, oh, we're going to hedge with China, no, you're going to get your head handed to you. And they will do it slowly and with a smile, and you'll get a nice dinner, and they'll roll out the red carpet, and some of you will make a lot of money from it. They will bribe you until they no longer need you. Some of you would tell me, Mike, we own a facility in China. You own nothing. You are a squatter. And they will take it away from you the moment they think it's useful. Here you go. How many of you lawyers have actually tried a case in a Chinese court? Right. You have to laugh because there's no capacity to enforce basic contract and property rights. The central thesis of conservatism, right, is that the way you build is these ideas of property right and human dignity and the fact that we work and create value for ourselves and our families. None of that is part of their law or their culture. And so my urging to them was move past the irritation and remember who the people are that share your values.
Thank you.
And if you do that, you'll get it right. And by the way, here's the good news on this side. That sounds a little depressing. Here's the good news. 3/4 of the world's GDP sits on our side of the line today. Maybe it's only 2/3, depends on how you count it and how you value currencies. But the vast majority, you put India, South Korea, Japan, most of the rest of Asia, ex-China, Australia, you take Europe, most of them sit on the side that shares a fundamental belief about life in the same way we do. We should make sure we're all working on team decency.
Team decency.
Yeah.
Now, while authoritarians have different forms of expression, they tend to talk to each other, and you've worked in this space by dealing with them head on. Xi Jinping's China had built Russia and the Kremlin into a gas station, essentially, to supply the rise of the Middle Kingdom. And his forays into the Middle East saw him fuel and partner with the clerical military dictatorship in Iran. And when you see what kind of, to the tune of billions of dollars in Belt and Road Initiative support, technological trade, shadow fleet, discounted energy deals, In the last 3 years, October 7th, as we've all been horrified with, not just unleashed war upon the Jewish people in the state of Israel, but war upon the Jewish world well beyond. When you're looking at what's happening in the Middle East today, and you see what Israel has been able to accomplish over the last 2.5 years, today now in the midst of this next generation of going after the heart of the Hydra beast, which is the regime itself, what do you see has shifted in the Middle East in the last 3 years as it relates to China and to how Iran has been threatening its neighbors?
Yeah. So post-October 7th, if one wants to point to something and say something good came from this, and that's hard to think about, it is the case that the Russians and the Iranians and the Chinese have a significantly smaller grip on anything in the Middle East than they've had in the last 17 or 18 years, when they really began to collectively build out there. The Russians have lost nearly everything, right? Their puppet in Damascus is gone. Hezbollah greatly diminished. Hamas weaker, but not gone. And of course, their launching pad, both of them, was Tehran, now in a very difficult position. They also made a strategic decision to fire ballistic missiles at their Muslim brothers, not just at Al Udeid Air Base or at Al-Assad in Iraq, and not just, frankly, even at energy infrastructure. They fired at hotels and civilians. In fact, in the Emirates, 2/3 of the attacks were at purely civilian targets. Think residences, schools, mosques, nothing to do with any infrastructure, energy, commerce, or military targets. They get the joke in ways that they knew, and they're now counting on all of us not to lose the beat, right? What they're really worried about is that President Trump will make a decision to say, I'm halfway over the fence, and I'm not going to finish the task. And we have to do that. If we do, you will have you'll have 30 to 50 years where Iran is contained in a way that is fundamentally different. I don't know if the regime will change, but the regime won't have the capacity to extort in the way that it has for the time that it built out this proxy network across the world. And so I know there's folks that think, this was a war of choice. That's a fraudulent presentation. My regret actually is that we didn't do it when I was in the administration 7 years ago. And that's not because I wanted to be credited for it, but think about this. 7 years ago, had the United States taken this action, or 4 years ago, or 11, there wouldn't have been one Shahed drone. There would not have been a ballistic missile as recently as 2017, 2018, with over 500 kilometers range. Imagine had President Trump not done this, where we'd be 7 years from now. It's hard. Everybody's like, well, you didn't have to do it on Wednesday. Okay, that may be true, but at some point, a nuclear-armed Iran with a conventional system around it that would have precluded us doing what we're doing today, in the same way that it's hard to imagine doing what we're doing on North Korea, because they have such a conventional system that can destroy Seoul in a handful of hours. This was not only proper but necessary, and now the task is to build out a Middle East that shares commercial ties. The Abraham Accords was a piece of this.
Let me say congratulations on the most important diplomatic accord in the last century.
Thank you. I take a little piece of credit for it. There were so many hands, Secretary Mnuchin, Jared Kushner. We had two great ambassadors, David Friedman and John Rakolter, who was our ambassador in the Emirates. And then the three leaders, Mohammed bin Zayed, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and President Trump. They all took risks to put that foundational piece in place. And by the way, Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, while he didn't sign the accords, none of this would have happened without him saying, okay, let's go do this. And so I credit those leaders who took a lot of risks. And I think we're seeing the benefits of that today. But it is a moment, and the task is not complete. And so I hope we'll get help from our European friends. It looks pretty scarce, but always welcome.
You're looking at...
and our Canadian friends, too. Come on. Let's go.
We're trying. Do you, staying on the Middle East just a little bit further, do you think it's possible to demilitarize Hamas?
Yes. Yeah, you can absolutely do it. And when I say that, you're not going to get every hand grenade and every rifle, but you can decapitate the regime, the Hamas leadership, in a way that doesn't permit them to organize and build out any infrastructure capable of doing what they did on October 7th or anything that approximates that. It is not an easy task, and it is years in the making. It's not next week or next month. They're not going to line up and hand their weapons over in exchange for $50. So this is a long process, and the Israelis will stay at it and continue to be deeply involved in Gaza until such time as it occurs. That they're not going to. By the way, this is not about Prime Minister Netanyahu. I hear people, mostly from the left, but some in my party, saying, "Oh, the problem is Netanyahu." There is not a Prime Minister of Israel who has any chance of getting elected who would not do almost precisely what Prime Minister Netanyahu has done to date and will continue to do. Whoever their next leader is, whatever it is, you should never predict Bibi losing. That's you'll lose a lot of money. So it's a hard problem. And Hezbollah is equally difficult, if not more so. But when you cut off the master in Tehran, the paymaster in Tehran, you now increase the probability that the Lebanese armed forces can take on Hezbollah, and you can build out something through whatever mechanism, the border peace or whatever mechanism, you can build out something in Gaza that provides sufficient sovereignty and security for Israel to give them a chance to self-govern.
You have the IRGC is failing to meet payroll and provide bonuses to their brutal repression and the instruments of it. They were able to pay bonuses after they killed over 40,000 Iranians back in January 8 and 9. Their energy is now starting to find no home. The Shadow Fleet and the deals that they had made with China, the teapot refineries that have been sanctioned by the United States, seems to be choking the regime financially. Unpack this for us.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely choking them. But you've seen regimes like this in history. They survive an awfully long time, right? Because they starve the people and feed themselves. That's what Chairman Kim does in North Korea, right? 27 million North Koreans, 25.5 million of which are in destitute poverty, 1.5 million of which have a pretty decent life. So they can last a while. It's not going to happen in days or even weeks. But I am mindful when I hear some talking about, oh my gosh, it's been a failure, and well, the regime will never change. They're going to stick around forever. Those same people said that about the Soviet Union. And I was a soldier in Germany, patrolling the East German border from 1986 until October of 1989. I was a young lieutenant. It was a great job, by the way. If you want a good beer hall in Munich, I'm your man. I know them all. When I left, no one thought that the Soviet Union was on the verge of collapse or that the East German wall was going to come down. And 8 days later, it did. When I say no one, they at least didn't inform Lieutenant Pompeo. But I don't think the captains, majors, colonels, or generals knew either. These things have a way of looking incredibly strong until they break because they become fragile. And the work that's been done, not only the economic work that's been done, but the defenestration that the Iranian people saw of their military that told them, no, we can protect ourselves, and watched all of the destruction that took place. And then, they're all having dinner, and the person next to them works for Mossad, for goodness sake, right? They can see that. And so I suspect it is a lot more difficult today and a lot more fragile than the West actually perceives. But it doesn't mean this is quick and easy.
Never has been.
Never will be. But if we stay at it and we're determined, we will get a lot better life for the 80 million people who live there, or the 85 million folks who live in Iran. And more importantly, as an American, the risk that an American has to go there and risk their lives 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now will decrease dramatically.
Well, you're already seeing peace negotiations between Israel and Lebanon as a result of Hezbollah being weakened. You're seeing Iron Dome being deployed in the United Arab Emirates as a result of Iranian aggression. You're seeing an end to OPEC and perhaps the permanent disruption of GCC. Yeah. These new alignments are fascinating in the region and for the world. What does it mean for North America?
It means we should be part of that, all of us, right? Those alignments are going to work. They're not just going to work. We think about that. We think about the Middle East as to your point about as a gas station, right? As an energy supplier. They are, And many businesses have thought of them as capital suppliers as well, right, as a result of their resource wealth. But these are really good partners for us in North America. They're good trade partners. They can be fantastic military partners for us. They have demonstrated that. When I was the CIA director, they were fantastic intelligence partners as well. By the way, as was the Canadian Intelligence Services. I worked with two of them. You should know, your intelligence services are world-class. They're really, really good. And they're not political. In the same way that the CIA is not political, they just do their freaking jobs. And you should be incredibly proud of that. And so we ought to go build them, and then we should encourage, when you start to move to the Middle East, we should encourage Asia, Central Asia in particular, to connect with them as well. And you're starting to see some of these pipelines move energy, and not just energy but goods across that corridor as well. That will create a connectivity that lets Central Asia come to the west and not be so dependent in the east as they have been for the last 35 or 40 years.
So Central Asia, Ukraine, even going further into Europe. One of the things I find fascinating about this conflict in the Middle East is also how Ukrainian technologies and interceptors have created new relationships across the Gulf region, which has typically been a bit agnostic about the war in Ukraine.
That's very polite. You could be a diplomat.
I'm not very. Yeah. I'm not. That's the first time somebody called me diplomat.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
there you go.
What I would also say is Ukraine has now, in the last 2 weeks, undertaken bombing Russian ports, Russian energy port facilities that have been supplying into other parts of the world. In many ways, the Ukrainians are making the sanctions imposed on Russian gas and Russian oil a bit more permanent. Mm-hmm. We haven't seen anything from the White House on that in the last couple of weeks. What's your interpretation of how that's being perceived?
So it's interesting. I have been critical of President Biden's approach in Ukraine and President Trump's. In my view, neither of them did the necessary to battle the evil that is Vladimir Putin, to give the Ukrainians the capacity to do what you're seeing them now begin to do. Full disclosure, I'm an advisor to a company called Firepoint in Ukraine. It makes an amazing cruise missile. Many of the strikes you're referring to are a missile called the Flamingo. They build it. It's really
a fun name.
Yeah. Long
Did you play a role in that?
I did not play a role in that. What's interesting is the Biden administration would have had this happen, would have told them to stop. And at the very least, this White House has said, I don't know what you're talking about, right? That is a good thing. Imagine that we told the Israelis that they couldn't attack into Gaza, that all they could do was just use their Iron Dome to defend their own nation.
Some did.
That's what President Biden told the Ukrainians. You cannot use an American or Western tool outside of your own border. So they can park 2 tank divisions right on the border, and you are not permitted to strike them. That's just nuts. Right? It's nuts from an American perspective. Right? Securing the freedom for peoples of Eastern Europe is important. We all know the history. And so I'm encouraged by what the Ukrainians have been able to do. I probably go to Kyiv, I don't know, half a dozen times a year. I've been a little bit out to the east. I haven't been all the way to the front line. But when you see pictures of the front line, nobody's going to move along that thing for a long time. And that sets the conditions for Ukraine being able to continue at least to defend that which they have defended to date. I suspect a year from now it won't be terribly different than it is today, which it breaks my heart. It's not, right? The Russians are having about 1,000 casualties a day. The Ukrainians something less than that, but still very significant. I hope there's a path forward. But in the end, this turns on, can we inflict enough pain on Vladimir Putin to convince him to give up the game? And to date, neither Europe nor the United States has been prepared to provide sufficient support to permit that to happen.
In the conservative debate around the world, when it engages issues of the Middle East or issues of this war in Europe by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, you have, in the past, and I grew up in this time because I was in Iraq and Afghanistan in 2005 to 10, you have in the past that debate between the more values-imbued conservatives and the more interest-based conservatives, the more realist conservatives. It was a period of neoconservatives that had taken us into the adventures of the last wars in the region. But today, when you look at modern conservatism, there is a different break that's happening in terms of how to assess the facts of the Middle East and how to assess the facts of Vladimir Putin and what they're doing in Ukraine. I'm not interested in naming names or talking about individual platform people, but more about our conservative movement and this conservative moment. It requires a sense of, I think, both moral clarity, but also the ability to not condescend and actually persuade people who are rightfully skeptical of foreign adventurism.
Yeah.
How do you respond to this moment in conservatism where trust has been broken over so long and now information is so disaggregated, you're not quite sure where the right place is to get the best information? How do you help unify conservatives in thinking about confronting the rivals of our age?
So I'll answer that, but I do want to begin with one caveat. Some of the folks who have self-identified to say they're part of this movement, this conservative movement, if you go down the line and give them 20 questions, they feel like Bernie Sanders. So it's not just isolated to foreign policy. If you ask about their economic ideas, it's like, well, we should have a bigger government, we should spend more money. So be very careful about a handful of these folks who now they would identify themselves as part of the conservative movement. They're not part of any conservative movement that I've ever read about or have understood, nor are they part of a conservative movement that I experience. So while I'm in business now, I'm still hanging around the political hoop, helping candidates. I hope we do better than the world thinks we're going to do in November. It'll be a slog, but trying to help candidates raise money. So I engage with citizens who are just out there making a living, taking care of their families, going to church, doing the things we all do. They want none of that. They still understand the world as a dangerous place and that evil roams it. And so the vast majority get that peace through strength is the right answer. You know, I would have said that I was someone who was a restrainer, but now I feel like they just out-restrained me. I'm pretty practical when it comes to the things that we are capable of doing, the things that we aren't, and that we have to choose. But never should that choice be made by misunderstanding the nastiness of our adversary. We can't always fix them all, and we certainly can't always fix them all at any given time. But we should never say, yeah, the problem, it turns out, is Ukraine. Now, your question gets one level deeper. Like, how do you confront that? So I've spent a fair amount of time on Capitol Hill talking to my fellow former House members who were skeptical. And they would always they would have reasons. And so the answer is, not to your point about not be condescending, not diminish the things that concern them, acknowledge them when they're true. Is there corruption in Ukraine? Answer, yes. Right? And so they would worry about corruption. They said, well, we shouldn't spend our money because they're corrupt. Okay, what we should do is try and eliminate corruption, make sure we channel our money in the right way, and reduce the risk that it goes to a bad end. But the mission still remains. We should, and is their democracy still fledgling and complex and imperfect? Yes, I remember a fledgling democracy, or at least reading about one. I'm not that old. In the United States, we should be driving to make that better. But when it comes to who's challenging the things that matter most to us, we should speak with a clarion signal that says, no, the United States is going to continue to stand for the things that made us this exceptional place. The great voters... And they get that, and they're like, I'm with you, brother, but man, here, I'll give the last piece, but this is worth the time. I'm with you, brother, but man, that's hard to go back home and tell, because when I have a town hall meeting, the people who show up are like, Mike, how come we're spending money in Ukraine, but we didn't fix the pothole? This is the politician's curse. You have to explain that. And there are, I'll speak for America, there are many elected officials who just aren't up to the task. The easiest thing to do is to tell that person, you know, that's a good point. That's a really good point. We need to fix your pothole. I think our citizens deserve better than that. I think they deserve a fixed pothole and an explanation about why their grandchild will be in a much better place in the world if we also do the necessary. And last thought, if you get caught in an argument about this, you should concede the costs. The costs to the United States of America of doing this are enormous. We spend a pile of money. We're going to spend $1.5 trillion, bigger than almost every global economy, on defense if we pass this budget for this next year. And I think we will. $1.5 trillion. We've lost lives in this conflict in Iran. We lost a lot of lives in Afghanistan, and we can argue about Iraq and Afghanistan, but it's expensive. It's costly. And we should acknowledge those costs. But don't forget, this is a balance sheet. And there has been no nation that has benefited as much from the post-World War II construction and American leadership as the United States of America. And I would argue Canada sitting right alongside of it. We have benefited enormously from expending these costs, right? Canada was in Afghanistan alongside of us as well, right? We should make sure that we count both sides of the ledger. And that's the thing I think sometimes my conservative colleagues don't get. They just tally the costs and they tell people, we're not going to do that. And they forget the fact that we live with relative religious freedom and a deep economic powerhouse precisely because we spent those resources to protect and preserve an order that was both morally proper and beneficial to the United States interests.
I appreciate that. Kansas. You know a little bit about Kansas.
I do.
Kansas is a really important state in the American conservative heartland, the birthplace of Tea Party, Republican thinking, populist thinking, I think, in American life. This Iran war, how do you think people in Kansas are responding to it today?
If you polled Kansans, it would be very close in terms of, and it would depend how you word the question, I suppose, but it'd be very close. If we win, everybody will pretend they were for it the whole time. And so we should win. And so the outcome will actually matter. One of the failures of some of the previous wars in the Middle East was we didn't see them through to their logical conclusion. That is, we didn't go win and be done, and they lingered, and we suffered, and we didn't get the outcome that was proposed at the front end. Here we've got a real opportunity to do that. Second, while Kansas would be roughly split, in the Republican Party it'd be 85-15 in support of what President Trump has done. Partly because they support President Trump, but largely because they can see why this matters to them as well. And in the Democrat Party, it'd be 70-30 the other way. They've had an enormous amount of anti-Israel, anti-Semitism creep into the Democrat Party. And while it's the minority party in the state of Kansas, there's still a significant number of Democrats. And they would all say this was a bad idea, partly because they think it's a bad idea and partly because they suffer from Trump derangement syndrome as well.
We know some of those people.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say something, but I'm smart. I won't.
Oh, no, you should. Do it right now. Nobody's watching. It's fine. It's just you and me.
I'll save it.
Let me pick it up from this, though. You going to run for president?
I don't know. I imagine the answer is probably no. But my wife and I will pray and think about it. We were getting ready to go run in 2024, but we would have gotten crushed by Trump, too. So we kept our powder dry. It's an incredibly arrogant thing to say you're thinking about running for president, right? Like, no, I really think I'm that person. Like, nobody else can be the president as good as me. That is a hard thing for me to get my head around a lot of times. But if we think we can, and I say we, it's my wife and I, right, who will have to ultimately make the decision. If we think we can shape the conversation in the way that we've been having this conversation, if I think I can move our party or the country in that direction, even if I get wiped out and lose, it would still have been a worthy effort.
I appreciate that.
I'm not sure.
It's a big decision. I can't imagine what it's like.
It's a big decision, and frankly, I'm not sure I'm a good enough politician to do that, to shape that conversation.
The world needs less politicians.
Yeah.
Let me, if you don't mind, I'd love to reflect on some lessons of leadership. Moral clarity under pressure. Many leaders face criticism, often for being too rigid. How has your faith and commitment to America's founding values shaped the kind of moral clarity you believe strong leaders must demonstrate now in a polarized world?
Two thoughts. So I just have been incredibly blessed. For me, America's given me opportunities that are just staggering. Like, I was running a machine shop in Wichita, Kansas, 15 years ago. Like, if you'd asked one of my lathe operators, like, see that dude? Like, he's going to be the Secretary of State. They would have laughed, right? And yet, I got this incredible privilege to serve and to do my best every day to try and deliver on behalf of President Trump and the country. That always kept me focused, no matter how much noise, no matter what the Washington Post would say. Like, I just got up every morning, put the helmet on, and went back at it. I will say this, and I think this is true in lots of parts of life, not just for senior leaders of nations, but for business leaders, for faith leaders, for leaders in their family. It is really important that we each stay grounded. If you don't know who you are, if you don't have this deep understanding of who you are, you will get whipsawed, and the system will crush you. And you will end up saying things and doing things that you would not have believed you would say or do 2, 5, 10 years before that. And so when I think of like the most important qualities when I'm looking for someone who's going to go lead something that matters to me, I'm looking for someone that I know is anchored, deeply anchored. I think that often comes from faith. That happens to be my bias. But it can be in a understanding of nation as well. And if they're just doing it because that's the flavor of the day, the Tea Party movement is ascendance, the MAGA movement is in ascendance, whatever it is, man, they will end up going with the flow. And that's not the kind of leaders you need in any one of the institutions that really make a difference in our countries.
Okay. Leading through crisis. You've had a long tenure. Looking back on your tenure, what was the most testing moment that revealed what constitutes that strength to lead really requires? And what did it teach you about decision-making under fire?
Good. You know, the most difficult things that I faced were that I had folks in the field whose lives were at risk. So State Department folks in embassies all across the world. We had our embassy in Baghdad came under fire, I think, 100 straight days. When I was a CIA director, we were making life and death decisions. We had folks out every night all over the world doing crazy great stuff, but with enormous amount of risk. And so that was difficult because it wasn't me. I was safe. I had my security team all around me, and I was asking them to do things that were put them and their families in a really difficult place. That was, of all the things, the most stressful. What I took away from that was really what I was talking about before, in the following sense. You better know who you are, and then you better make sure your team knows who you are, and then all the work you do. If you are waiting till there's a problem to say, I'm going to go learn about this, or you show up in these jobs, and it is come as you are. So whatever it was that I studied when I was a young cadet, or whatever I learned about the law of war when I was in law school, or whatever my dad taught me when he slapped me upside the head, whatever lessons I had built my foundational understandings of the world on were the ones that I brought to bear. And when you're in those moments, I write about this a little bit in the book. The very beginning of my time, I was the brand new CI director. I was still trying to figure my way around the building. And Assad had fired chemical weapons and killed civilians. And President Trump had said, I'm not Barack Obama. If Assad uses chemical weapons, we're going to respond. Remember, President Obama had said he was going to and then didn't. And so wake up one morning and the reports all say that this happened. President Trump asked the team to show up at the White House in the Situation Room later that morning, mid-morning. So I spent 4 hours with my team back at Langley with a simple task. I was just the CI director. I wasn't about policy. Like, are we sure these were chemical weapons? Are we certain that Assad fired them? It wasn't a false flag operation. And are we sure people were killed, right? The three connective dots that one had to conclude at a very high level of certainty. Because we were about to go downtown and brief the President of the United States, who was going to go do something. And I brought the team in, about 6 or 8 people, and I started with the youngest person. It was a female. She was fantastic, about a 25-year-old gal. And she was the SIGINT person in Syria. And she is the one who had listened to the SIGINT that morning. And I said, so, what do you know? She said, it was him, it was chemicals, and it killed people. And I said, go downstairs, get in the vehicle, you're going to the Situation Room. And at that point, I was just kind of testing her to make sure she was like not going to back up on her story later. But I took her down there. It was crazy. We're in the vehicle, and she's like, her hands are shaking like this. And I'm thinking, my hands are about to shake too, but I'm not going to let her see it. Those are the moments that you're just counting on the fact that you've got a team, and you know enough that you can have confidence in your own leadership ability to deliver the things that the leaders around you and the team around you needs. And if you haven't done the hard work in preparation, if you're waiting till, gosh, I won't learn that until I get the job, it's too late.
Thank you. In your book, you define pipe hitters, people who deliver excellence and don't avoid hard fights. We have a room full of a lot of young people from across our conservative movement here. And in my closing question to you is your advice for the next generation, which is for rising leaders in government, in business, in politics, or the military who want to embody the kind of strength that you've held, the kind of strength you call on all of us to exhibit. What one non-negotiable habit or mindset would you urge them to cultivate?
I've met successful, lazy people, but not very many. There is very little substitute for willingness to work your tail off. And my son, if he was here, he would roll his eyes about now. But hard work is both virtuous in its own right and matters in everything that you do in life. It matters as the head of household, as a leader in your family, raising your children, as a mother. It matters in your business life. It matters in your interpersonal relationship with friends. The ability to work and sacrifice and do the necessary when no one's paying any attention makes a heck of a lot of difference. It doesn't mean you'll be the next CIA director or the head of Canadian Intelligence Services, but boy, it increases the chances a hell of a lot. And so I hear people talk about like work-life balance. And by the way, sign me up for that. I love a good party, but in the end, there are enormous personal and family and big payoffs to those who are willing to do the hard things and to help others do difficult things. And so I would just say, if you have a choice, fine, go have fun with friends on Friday night. But on Saturday, get back in the books and do the extra thing. Spend 30 more minutes at church on Sunday, wherever it is, or in your synagogue, or wherever you may be. Those are the things that deliver an increased probability that you will be able to have a successful life as you self-define it. I wish I had a slicker answer than that.
From the front of the Cold War as it turned into the end of the Cold War, to the directorship of the Central Intelligence Agency, to Secretary of State, to forging peace agreements like the Abraham Accords, and now today to your insights on Fortress North America, the realigned Middle East, what to think of when it comes to authoritarians and how to confront them, the DNA of our conservative movement, and our promise, the lessons and the wisdom that can be only shared by somebody of your tenure with people who are incredible, like the ones in this room today. From the bottom of my heart to the 70th Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.